Hey everybody, welcome. This is Matt Cromwell, admin at AWP and head of support at givewp.com. And this is our first interview series of 4 that we're going to be doing in the month of February, all about the upcoming Gutenberg editor. I'm really excited about this for a couple of reasons. One, we've never done this before in AdvancedWP, so that's kind of fun and cool. I'm also really excited about the guests that we're going to have. In particular, today we have Joost de Valk. He's the founder of Joost.com, one of the most widely installed and activated plugins in the WordPress repo, and we're going to talk all about that. Next week we're going to have, and Joost is also one of our admins of the group, so I'm excited about that. And next week we have another admin of the group, Ahmad Awais, is going to be presenting on some developer tools that he's built out for us for Gutenberg specifically. So today we're going to be talking about kind of the plugin perspective of Gutenberg, how plugins are going to be adapting to Gutenberg being in WordPress core. Next week we'll talk about what developers can do in terms of extending Gutenberg and building out new blocks and things like that with Ahmad. The week after that we have a Gutenberg core contributor named Tammy Lister. She's an automatician. And she's going to be bringing a design perspective and also talking about general ways that Gutenberg and the core committers from Automatic have been interacting with the developer community. And then we're going to wrap up the whole series with Matt Mullenweg, the co-founder of Automatic, who of course built WordPress from the ground up, more or less. So we're excited about the whole series, and I'm glad you guys are all here. And definitely chime in the comments below. We can see all the comments coming in just fine. This is the first time we've ever done this, so there might be some glitches. So hang on tight. We're trying to watch as quick as we can. Yeah, there will be bugs, or
just like bugs with Gutenberg.
Yeah, bugs that are more or less features. But chime in and let us know what's going on. We're basically breaking up this whole session into 2. The first part is about a 20-minute interview, me just asking Joost all the hard questions and making him nervous, making him sweat. And then, the next part is an AMA, people being able to ask whatever you want to ask in the comments, and we will rapid fire answer them as quickly as we can, or Joost will. I'll just sit and watch and continue making him nervous. So that's the idea. Cool. So first off, Joost, introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
So hi, I'm Joost. I'm the husband of Marike, which is probably my most important feat. Father of 4 kids. Live in the Netherlands, where Joost is also based. I founded Joost in 2010, hired my first colleague in 2012. Right now, Joost is approximately 80 people, of which about 60 in the Netherlands. We run a bunch of plugins, but are most well known for Joost SEO, which is available for a couple of platforms, but is most installed on WordPress itself. With currently somewhere in between 7.5 and 8 million installs, which is a number that scares me to no end. Well, that's about it, basically. I've been on the web for ages. That's probably a good thing to say. I built my first website in 1994, which is longer ago than I dare explain to my kids.
Nice. Well, as always, really great to have you on. So let's get to it. First, tell us a bit about your general thoughts on Gutenberg in general. What do you think about it so far?
I think we had a bit of a false start in many ways with how the project was approached from the beginning and then presented towards the wider community. I think the ideas behind it are pretty solid in that we want a more modern editing experience, and well, the whole backend could use a bit more modern approach. I don't always know whether we're really solving any user problems or whether we're solving problems that we as developers perceive that people might have. In general, though, I'm pretty enthusiastic about what it can do and where it can bring us, and how it could bring the entire admin experience, not just the editor, but the entire editing experience within WordPress of the entire site, not just a post or a page, to a much, much higher level than we currently have. So in general, I think I'm very positive, actually, and I think there's a lot left to be done, but at the same time, the pace of development is rather insane.
Yeah, no, for sure. One big question everybody seems to be having is, when do you think it's going to be going into core? I mean, Matt has said a couple times that he's hoping that 5.0 essentially would be ready in April. I'm a little bit skeptical that's going to happen, and that's okay. You know, it needs to go in when it's ready, but what's your feeling right now in terms of when it might make it?
I'm skeptical. I think April might be the right month. I don't think 2018 will be the year.
Oh, I see.
No, yeah, at the same time, if that's true, I'd also be very sad. I do think we have to ship this at some point. I don't really see it be ready in April. I think in April, they'll be ready for the merge proposal state. If you look on GitHub, there's actually a couple of milestones right now that they're working towards. I think after merge proposal and when we get to merge proposal and even more people will hopefully be testing with it, we'll run into a shit ton of bugs. In my most optimistic view, we'll be ready sometime before WordCamp Europe. That'd be June. I think October, November is probably more realistic.
I mean, from your perspective, you also just, I'm sorry, I forget which version number it was. You just had you had a really large version number. Was it 3.0 where the whole Yoast UI was like revamped completely? Like
3.0. That's almost 2.5 years ago now. We did something that's very close to what Gutenberg is now doing, which is basically redo our entire UI and move it all to JavaScript.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm sure as you were ramping up for that, there was a bunch of your customers and users who were like, where is this thing? Where is this thing? Where is this thing? And then I'm sure there's also plenty of, on the back end of it, oh, well, here is it, but you know, it's not making me happy anymore. So like, can you speak into that tension between wanting to get it out for the users, but also making sure that it's ripe and ready to go? Can you speak into that a little bit?
It's hard because at some point you'll have to actually push it into a lot of people. So if WordPress were purely a SaaS, you could ramp up Gutenberg to say 100,000 or 200,000 users and monitor their usage and their errors and everything. And you could see a whole lot more than we currently can. Basically, you're developing in the blind for an environment in which almost every site is unique. I'm a deep Apple fan, and one of the reasons that Apple makes phones that are so awesome is because they restrict pretty much everything. So an iOS developer is developing for a couple of versions of the iPhone, but that's it. I wish I was only developing for a couple of versions of WordPress and a couple of combinations of plugins. But the reality is that we, with Joost and Gutenberg is similar, are developing for a group of sites, of tens of millions of sites, that each and every one of them runs a unique combination of plugins that tie into each other in a weird way. And we're doing all that based on a JavaScript language that is pretty bad in terms of if something breaks and it's not properly try-catched in the code, everything breaks.
Mm.
This is what we ran into with Yoast SEO 3.0, is that we could prevent ourselves from breaking. We weren't breaking hard, but a lot of other plugins were throwing JavaScript errors. And suddenly every plugin with more than 10,000 installs that was throwing JavaScript errors in the admin was a major pain in the ass to us. Because basically our plugin wouldn't work anymore because they were throwing JavaScript errors.
Yeah. That's actually like a big concern of mine with how Gutenberg will impact WordPress as a whole, is that we don't really have really strong asset management in WordPress in general. And we're going from a PHP-driven interface to really a purely JavaScript-driven interface. And I just could imagine, not being able to control all the JavaScript that's being loaded on your post-edit screen becoming really problematic.
Yes, I think we're going to have to explain try-catch to a whole lot of people. And we're going to have to find a way to highlight to people why stuff is breaking a bit better. A whole lot more people will have to dive into their JavaScript console than they used to. But we've been there. I mean, we've been doing this for the last 2 years. I have to say it's been fairly stable in the last year or so, and we haven't had too many issues with other plugins throwing major errors anymore. So I think the community at large is ready for this. It's just there's a lot of possibilities for breakage.
Yeah. And
I tend to want to avoid those.
Yeah. I think everybody does. But at what point do you just make sure that WordPress is moving forward regardless? I think that's kind of the tension that Matt and the Gutenberg team and Automatic are navigating, is trying to be like, well, we need the project to move forward in a way that is more modern, more attractive to young developers, so that people continue to build on WordPress and want to build on WordPress.
Well, it's not just that. It's also the existing people who do not want to work on Gutenberg but want to work on other sections of WordPress, who are currently hampered in their development because 5.0 is supposed to be Gutenberg. And in minor releases, they can't add new files and do other things, so they can't do any major developments to other sections of WordPress itself. So one of the reasons I want WordPress to just move on as fast as possible is just that. Is that I want WordPress to do more than just be Gutenberg. In the end, Gutenberg is just the editor. And of course, there's going to be more parts of WordPress that will be affected by what we are building in WordPress, and we're going to use it in more places. But it is just the editor, and it will be the editor and the widget editor, and it will be menus, and it will probably be a whole lot more. But for now, it shouldn't hold everything else up, and that is a bit what it's doing right now. That's one of the things where I think we've had a false start. I like Gutenberg. I don't like that it's tied to 5.0.
Yep. Let's move to the next one. I'd love to hear in detail what you guys at Yoast are working on in order to get Yoast SEO ready for Gutenberg specifically. So
we're very close. I think we're like a couple of maybe 6 weeks or so away from having like a working version of Yoast SEO on Gutenberg. We were already working on moving to React with our interface, which is the same code base that Gutenberg is based on. So we were actually very happy to see that part of it. Our snippet preview and a couple of other things around that still need to be fixed. Our SEO analysis, our content, our readability analysis are already done and are already fully React. So it looks like what we'll be doing is we'll take over, or we'll have a plugin in Gutenberg that takes over the right sidebar, and you'll see our readability analysis, our SEO analysis, our internal linking suggestions, etc. there. On top of that, we're working on a commenting API. Actually, some other people have worked on that as well. It's called the Annotations API, I think, on Gutenberg's GitHub, where you'll come to a system that looks close to Google Docs commenting. And we want to use that for inline suggestions on how to improve stuff. In general, I think actually Gutenberg ties in pretty well with what we wanted to do, which is more actionable feedback as you type on sentences, etc., that you were typing for readability advice, and for our overall view of how we want to approach Yoast SEO. We want you to do more cross-post optimization, so more on-site stuff where we go like, hey, this post could use more links. We think these 5 posts would be good ideas to have linked to that one post. Let's take you numbers 1 through 5 and make you add the links. Actually having an API for and an interface that allows us to do things like that simply and in a cool, good-looking interface, a more app-like experience instead of having to reload the admin all the time. I think it will make our plugin a lot more powerful than it already is. So I'm very excited for what we will be able to do with it. There's 2 people on my team currently working on the last APIs that we need to have all the content that we need to be able to build our analysis. So these are Gutenberg APIs that they're working on that basically allow us to get all the content out of Gutenberg that we need. And then we can do the last bits of work to tie everything together. But 4 to 6 weeks should probably be enough for us to have a first working version of Yoast SEO for Gutenberg, and then we can start polishing.
Nice. So are you satisfied, or I don't know if that's the best word, but are you satisfied with the interface that Gutenberg provides for you to be able to do all the things that you want to do? I mean, so far there's a lot of developers and plugin owners who are developing blocks, and that's a real straightforward type of experience that Gutenberg is like, that's what Gutenberg's all about. And people are building blocks like crazy already. But what you have to do is not block oriented. And so you're dealing with that little drawer on the side. And then in one way or another, how they're able to add, meta information in one form or another. Like, do you feel like there's enough stuff there in Gutenberg available for you to really do what you want to do with content?
Yeah, I think so, actually. I think we will be able to use the right-hand sidebar. We'll also be able to do basically a complete screen takeover of the for specific sections. So a snippet preview and a Facebook preview and stuff like that will show on like the entire screen, and you'll be able to, because it's much more of an app, you can flick things away, you can add things and move things in a much more natural way than we currently do in the editor. I'm not worried. I actually think it will improve a lot. We also have decided to actually bring our classic editor experience in line with our Gutenberg editor experience, because otherwise making support docs is going to be hard. Which means that we'll move towards that interface. Regardless of when Gutenberg launches, we will be preparing to move to a different interface for Yoast, where we're more in the right-hand sidebar. Anyway, because otherwise it becomes impossible for us to maintain documentation, etc.
Yep, exactly. I know you're a big fan of React, so now that once Gutenberg is there, React's going to essentially be in core. a lot of folks might not even know that there was a JavaScript framework called Backbone in Core for forever, just simply because developers just didn't like working with it. So nobody really built a whole lot. I think Ninja Forms actually leveraged Backbone a lot. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts on React specifically, and how you think that having React in WordPress core might benefit development in general and plugin development specifically.
I think we're finally using something that I think we should do slightly more of in the WordPress community, which is looking outside of our own bubble and figuring out where other people are building cool things. React is probably one of the most advanced JavaScript libraries out there. Of course, there are other options, and everyone can have their opinions on what's better and what's not better. We chose React because of its stability and because of everything it offered. We also chose React because at that point Automatic was already looking at it as well, and we knew that, and they were at that point building Calypso in it when we started working on it. So it made sense. We're very happy with it because it's a lot more of a modern interface. I think it might have a slightly steeper learning curve for new plugin developers to do things with. At the same time, most plugin developers will not have to do anything close to what we need to do. So for most plugin developers, it'll be blocks and blocks alone, and blocks are fairly simple. I mean, Ahmad will probably talk about that next week, but we're building some ourselves now, and it just works. I mean, of course, there's things that we can make better there and things that we can improve on, but it's a lot better than any API we've ever had for anything like that in WordPress before. It beats shortcodes by a lot in terms of user interface. In terms of developer interface, I think it's fairly doable. It's just a new language. One of the things that we have to stop talking about, in my opinion, is how hard it is for everyone to learn a new language. Because there's also a ton of developers out there that already know JavaScript and that already know React and that can suddenly start building things for WordPress that couldn't before. I know that we've had a less hard time finding React developers than we have a hard time finding a really good PHP developers.
Interesting.
So I think it's a good move, and I think React will allow us to make the WordPress admin a lot better in many, many, many ways, because there is a lot of horrible things in the WordPress admin that we need to fix. Not all of them can be fixed at once, but anyone who's ever looked at list tables for longer than 5 minutes will agree with me that that code needs like drastic change. And that's basically every table that we render in the backend. So,
I mean, we're already talking about it for our stuff, for donations and give, that we would love to not have to deal with WP list tables at all. So
I think it is Ryan McHugh who's done a WP list tables React thing. You should look it up and play with it for like 10 minutes, and then you go like, oh shit, this is so better.
This is what the world could look like. That's great.
So I think it's awesome. And at the same time, one of the things I see is that there's actually quite a few issues where we are assigning people to do things in the REST API because there's stuff that Gutenberg needs that's not in the REST API yet.
Interesting.
So there's a lot of layers there that need addressing. But yeah, I like React because of those choices. I'm not deep enough into it because I am a core PHP developer. I'm not most of the code I do also on Joost SEO is PHP. It's not JavaScript. There's a whole lot of people here in this company who can do that a lot better than I can. But they reviewed a lot of options, and this came out as well. This is really the only real option. I think having the entire discussion that we had about React in core and the licensing and all the discussion we had about that a couple months back has actually resulted in more people looking at it and looking at WordPress deeper. So there's Facebook core React devs involved with all of this. Google is actively looking at Gutenberg. You might have seen their job ad like 2 days ago where they are saying that they want someone to work on Gutenberg. Google released a couple weeks ago a board game thing API in React.
Oh, interesting.
It was very interesting. I think I think we're moving in the right direction, and we have a chance there, and we have actually already used the power of WordPress to force the license of React into something that we could work with.
I mean, that's what we assume. It seems obvious that that's the case. I mean, Facebook never admitted that, but it seemed pretty obvious. I mean, Apache was there too. Apache also said, we're not going to do this. So yeah,
but
Apache and WordPress combined.
Yeah, and Apache's not user facing as much.
Yeah.
So I think that's a difference.
Yeah.
But I like it, and I think it's a very good step for all of us.
Yep. I got 2 last questions, folks. If you want to start bringing in your questions, we'll start paying attention to them. We can see all the comments coming in already. I saw a couple comments about the title being a little bit covering up Joost's face. We don't want to do that. I'll probably just show the titles for like 5 seconds and hide them again, just so everybody knows where we're at in the whole in the whole thing. But 2 questions, and then we're going to take questions AMA style. So get them ready and prepared. Joost, what is your advice for plugin authors and theme authors for getting their plugins and themes ready for Gutenberg? What tips do you have for them?
Start with that now. Don't wait. Because this whole thing might move a lot faster than a lot of people realize. Let's say it's going to be April, May. Let's say that happens. Then if you don't start preparing now, you're too late.
Well, that's what a lot of people are saying is oh, I can prepare now, but then everything's going to change. I mean,
no. We're not at the point anymore where all that much is going to change. I mean, blocks are not going to change all that much anymore. The interface is not. We're adding to it. I don't see a lot of taking away. I see us discuss certain UI elements, but I don't think we'll suddenly break that. And waiting till everything is stable will mean that you have to wait till Gutenberg reaches its 3rd major version.
Yeah.
Because it will only become stable as it's released to the WordPress community. Because you need to battle test this. This is one of the reasons I like React a lot, because React has been battle tested more than any other JavaScript library in the world. And so that part is not going to break. But there's parts of Gutenberg that are going to break, and we'll figure them out. And that might mean changing APIs. But I don't think it's changing all that much. I would dive in. I would urge most people to consider whether what they do in WordPress can be a block and should be a block. I don't think there's all that many plugins that need to tie in the way we do. If we could get rid of a whole lot of meta boxes and replace them with blocks where people are editing the content in context in the position where they want it to be on the page, I think we'd make the editing experience a whole lot better for everyone.
Yep.
We're different in that we are metadata. So we don't have a position on the page. And we give feedback on what you're writing. But I think 95% of the plugins that even need to be on that page need to be blocks, and people need to start playing with those. I'm
not sure how to pronounce his name. Roddy, he just asked my next...
He's Dutch.
Oh, he's Dutch. He's Dutch. Nice. How do you pronounce it?
Jeroen.
Jeroen, nice. He's actually asking my next question. So
I see that.
my next and last question, then I'm going to let everybody else ask the questions, and I'll just watch Joost get uncomfortable. What do you have planned for 2018 in general? I know that Gutenberg is a big deal in general, but I'm sure you have lots of other stuff that you're anxious to push out there and improve with your whole suite of products. So tell us all the inside stuff.
So there's a couple of things we'll be doing. Joost as a company has two sides. Like we have the plugins and we have Academy. We'll do a whole lot of work on Joost Academy this year. So there will be more courses. Our existing courses will be improved, etc. For Joost SEO, I'm currently working myself on a pretty major overhaul of the Joost SEO admin, because we have far too many settings and we need to get rid of them and make them more meaningful to people. Stupid things like we ask you to whether you want to index, no index a specific post type, and whether you want to include that post type in the XML sitemap. Turns out that 99% of people doesn't know what that means nor wants to know what that is, which is not a weird thing, but we're changing that. So do you want this to appear in search engines and then make smart decisions on top of that? So there's a lot more user facing and a lot more thinking about, okay, so how do users see this and how does that make sense to them? And then as Gutenberg rolls out, I think we'll be able to expand on that in what we've been starting to with our internal linking feature in Joost SEO Premium, which is give more actionable SEO advice as you type, and give you more feedback on how you could improve your site. Right now, a lot of people enable an SEO plugin and think that they're done, and well, even though it helps, and I've been telling Matt Mullenweg that if he just installed Joost SEO on his blog, he would probably rank for his first name a lot sooner again, just by installing it, because we'd automatically fix his canonicals. But the reality is that most people will actually need to do work when they install an SEO plugin. You need to write content. You need to think about what you want to rank for. So we want to help you more with that and give you more actionable SEO advice.
Nice. Let's jump into the AMA, because we have a good amount of questions rolling in already, and not a ton of time. So let's start with Kevin Hoffman. As blocks are trickling out, we are seeing a hodgepodge of visual styles within those blocks, which can result in a different UI and UX per block. How do we develop a common design language throughout the plugin ecosystem?
That is a good question to which I do not have the answer yet.
See, I'm making you sweat already.
Well, it's something we've discussed. I see a lot of blocks also using inline styles, which makes me very sad. So we'll need to figure something out within Gutenberg to have an API for that, and do it properly. Yeah, we're going to ship something that does inline styles everywhere. The entire web development community will laugh at us.
Yeah, we should. I think that's actually a really good question for Tammy. We'll make sure and ask that to Tammy in a couple of weeks. Ahmad has a question. Yeah, Ahmad has a question. I wanted to ask, how does your launch timeline look like? Let's say you have your Gutenberg Yoast module API ready by the end of this month. When and how would you release it? Are you waiting? Yeah. You get the question.
Yeah, I see the question. We're not waiting. We are going to support both the Classic Editor and Gutenberg for at least 3 years after Gutenberg has been released. So as soon as we're ready, we're going to ship it. We're going to tell people that when they have the Gutenberg beta, that when they have the Gutenberg beta, we're going to tell them that we have an integration, but that our integration is in beta 2, because, well, we haven't had all that much testing, but it will be there. As soon as, and even right now, some of it already works. And we'll continue on making it work as well as we can. So we'll have both side by side. One of the things I would like the entire WordPress project to do is something similar, where we say, okay, we will support the classic editor for at least 2 or 3 years, because I think that's something that that we need to maintain stability for everyone.
Yeah. Next question. I know that the question might be a bit too detailed, but I'm curious, what are you handling how are you handling dynamic blocks? I'm working on a plugin for custom fields. I want to have a Gutenberg block which simply displays fields. I know it's not completely in the style of Gutenberg to do so, but it would be useful when somebody needs to develop something quickly. But I still need to use your JavaScript API directly.
Well, I don't know why it would not be a Gutenberg thing to do. I actually think that dynamic blocks will be a very powerful feature. The only thing that scares me about dynamics blocks is the SEO perspective, is that the content of a post can change in any given time without the SEO knowing. You'll probably still need a JS API to do some of the rendering in the editor and to make that look good and work well, but you don't necessarily have to do anything in JavaScript, if I recall correctly. But it's up to you mostly. I'd ask Amat next week how he would approach it, but I actually think that dynamic blocks are one of the powerful features of Gutenberg. It's also, in performance-wise, one of the scary features of Gutenberg. But we'll see how that goes as soon as we launch it.
Cool. We've hit we're current on our questions, our AMA questions. People keep bringing them in. Keep commenting. We have a few more minutes for more questions for Joost. I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you think the REST API is going to be expanded because of Gutenberg.
Well, we've already seen some things where like you couldn't add it to post slug because it wasn't in the REST API yet. So there's going to be more pieces where people need to get stuff from the REST API to be able to work with it in React, and it gets improved.
Yep. I mean, I think this goes part and parcel with also Matt Mullenweg a few years ago when people were pushing hard for the REST API to be adopted in core. He said, you know, once we can have the whole admin experience with the REST API, then it should be in core. We've made incremental progress on that despite not being able to control the whole admin, but it seems like the only way you could really control the whole admin with the REST API is really having the admin be a lot more JavaScript based.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we use the REST API in our configuration wizard as well. We've been using it from almost the day it shipped. We're fans, and I like that it's getting expanded.
Nice. Justin Labadie has a question. What is your favorite part of Gutenberg and your least favorite part?
Least favorite is easy. That's the floating toolbars. I hate those. They're very weird in many ways.
All right, specify which ones do you mean?
Oh, the ones that are. It says sometimes when you click a block, suddenly a toolbar appears somewhere.
So there's no toolbars. Once you click in there, then you see the bold, italic options and all that.
Yeah, instead of them being at the top of the page, where I expected them to be and where I'd like them to always be. That's a personal preference that we're still discussing in the editor chat every once in a while. It's gone back and forth a couple of times. What's my favorite part? I think my favorite part is actually blocks and the basic premise of what a block is and how we've combined widgets and shortcodes and a couple of other weird things that we had in WordPress into something that is actually something a user will be able to understand and use fairly easily.
You know, it's not my AMA, but like I want to piggyback on that. That the combination of the block-based editing with that it now has search and markdown support. I want to do this myself, or maybe somebody's going to steal this idea. I want to see somebody just basically type a really media-rich blog post article in real time with Gutenberg, because honestly, with TinyMCE, you couldn't do that without the mouse, essentially. I mean, you could, but it depends on the plugin and how they implement their shortcode builders or lots of things. But with Gutenberg, you should be able to just type. You hit a slash command to bring up a block that you want to insert. You hit enter. You keep going. You can keep your fingers on the screen the whole time. Like if somebody just did like a quick like live video cast of creating a dynamic layout with media-rich things, like that would really, to me, would highlight how powerful Gutenberg can be. You know?
Yeah, I think so too. And how important keyboard accessibility is.
Yeah,
it's just something we have Andrea on our team working hard on as well, on accessibility of Gutenberg in general.
Yeah, we're going to see Gutenberg blocks having to be prefixed all the time. That's going to be a pain. So you don't have, you know, too many plugins that are like image block, you know.
Yes, it's going to be search in Gutenberg for blocks. It's going to be hard.
Yeah, we have a question here from some random guy named Ben. Let's see what he has to say. How can plugin authors of less installed plugins learn from the experience of Joost in terms of conflicts with other plugins, themes, and WordPress core when it comes to moving forward into things like JavaScript and new features added to the WordPress ecosystem? That's actually a great question, Ben. Good job.
Well, to be honest, I think we should be doing some of that teaching. What we've learned is making your own code contained within like and make it touch it, the least amount of things that can break is very important. Stupid things like namespacing are very important. After that, it really boils down to talking to a lot of users and figuring out where things break. There will be integration issues. We probably have some of the most integration issues of most plugins because we basically exist on pretty much every screen. So if something breaks, we usually figure it out. I mean, our support team is very active on our GitHub and creates tickets for everything that they see come up more than once or twice. And we try and look into those, which is why we have a lot of open tickets as well. But yeah, it's a lot of talking, a lot of going into sites, seeing what breaks, trying to combine it. But in the end, it's mostly best practices of good namespacing, documenting your own code very well so other plugin developers can find where they are integrated, where things break and why things break and what they could do about it. I still see a lot of code in other plugins that is very poorly documented, and that really isn't helping anyone. So if I could do one thing in both core and in all the major plugins, it would be document every single line of code.
Nice. Another question from this Dutch guy who I can't pronounce his name. Say it one more time.
Yeah, Jeroen. Yeah.
Jeroen. Jeroen says, I heard you say to give 5% of your time back to the WordPress community. That was an initiative by Matt Mullenweg, 5 for the Future, that he was pushing a few years ago that a lot of companies have adopted, actually. So do you have any idea how much percent it is for Team Joost at this time?
Probably about 20, 25.
Where you dedicate purely to WordPress core, or how do you define that?
So there's currently 4 people working on Gutenberg. There's some people working on, we have a couple of full-time contributors like Sergey and a couple of others. And we're doing not WordPress core, but a lot of other things. Sergey is currently leading 493. I can't keep track of the minor releases anymore. It's a lot. I also don't really keep the books on it all that much. We want to give back. We've just done an internal presentation a couple weeks ago with like, what do we stand for? What do we think is important? And one of the most important slides to me there was just making more money is never a good reason to do anything. So we're not here to do that. We're growing, the company's healthy, so we invest a lot of our time and effort back into the WordPress ecosystem. And because of the focus on Gutenberg, that now means that a lot of our work goes into Gutenberg.
Yep. Nice. One more question. I think this will be our last question today. We're going to wrap it up at 45 minutes. I have released a plugin 6 months ago that is 90% custom meta boxes. Oh, sad face. Now I dread the fact that I have to rethink how I vision meta boxes to think about blocks instead. Do you have any guidance that you can provide?
Yeah. First of all, it sucks. You have to do it. I mean, we'll probably figure out a way to keep meta boxes working for a while, but you'll see very soon that every plugin that has a proper integration with Gutenberg that needs to be on that screen will do better than any plugin that maintains its old classic stuff. So you have to do it. There's no way of getting around it. I can totally see why it's a pain, but yeah, you should. In general, most of the meta boxes ask for user input, and well, blocks can do just that. I would make sure that if you make those turn those meta boxes into blocks, you can probably make them even better in context. I think that most developers tend to underestimate how important the context of where something will land in the content on the page is to the average user, and blocks will actually help that a lot. So I don't think it's hard. I think you should just build one block of one of your meta boxes and see, hey, this is actually a much better interface, and then do the rest.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that I'm personally excited about is that so many plugins are basically meta boxes that are saving what is essentially content in the post meta table, and that really, it just doesn't make sense. But that's the way, the best way to extend WordPress as is currently for most plugins. So that's going forward,
the mess of tables that we have, because there's a whole lot of problems there. But
So going forward, being able to just make sure that plugins that want to add content into the content actually get saved as content, that's actually really beneficial. So
I think so too. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Well, man, thanks so much for being on again, and really appreciate your time. I think it went really well overall. No, you know, you didn't make any bugs happen this time. So
sorry. I'll try harder next time.
Nice. So thanks so much, everybody. Next week, we're going to be on Monday with Ahmad Awais talking about ways to extend Gutenberg. And he has 2 really great resources about that already that you should look up. Next week, the time is different. It's actually going to be 8 a.m. in the morning. Ahmad is in Pakistan, so time difference is a bit different there.
Time zones, yeah.
So we're 8 a.m. Pacific time next Monday. We'll see you all there. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Bye-bye.